Free agency reports and trade reports are really starting to pick up for the Toronto Blue Jays, and as winter meetings approach, lots of things are going down. We have some new updates to go over today, but we also have MLB insider Keegan Matheson joining us today. Keegan, it has been a crazy past few months since we last spoke, and now, of course, we're into the offseason following the greatest Jays season in my lifetime. First of all, how you doing? Second of all, thank you very much for joining today.
No, thanks for having me, man. Doing well. Back into off-season mode now, man. Normally I have October, to do nothing. And normally I'm covering a team that's just lost out in the wild card round. And my world stops for 4 or 5 weeks. But I guess this is life when you're covering a World Series team. These off-season dates come quick. So it's been interesting, man. It's the whole off season comes quick. I just booked my spring training hotels. How sad is that? But here we go, man. It'll come quick, and that's probably for the best. I think people want something else to focus on, so
Yeah.
it's for the best that the off season news cycle is finally here.
Yeah, much different than last year where there was months. I mean, people were checking out halfway
Yeah.
through the season. But we have a lot to go over today, and obviously you were around the team during the World Series run. I'm gonna try to just take Game 7 out of my brain. I might ask you a little bit about it, but let's dive right into some things here now. Let's not waste any more time. Let's start with Bo Bichette. Now, there's a few, again, it's the time of year where you mentioned it. The offseason cycle is happening. There's reports. There's a lot of rumors. It's that time of year. Now, we spoke, I believe, before the season, a little bit before the trade deadline. And of course, I don't think either of us would have imagined the season that they had. Just absolutely crazy. But the question now, whether that be a year ago, whether that be 6 months ago, or now, is still Bo Bichette. And you've been on record on radio shows, I think JD Bunker show, a bunch of shows saying that he's always said he wants to be here. What is your current feeling about the Jays' pursuit and what Russ Atkins and company are thinking about Bo Bichette? Now, we know how good he is of a player. The big question mark is about him at second base, and get your thoughts on that as well. But there's a lot of reports and rumors, especially over the past few weeks, that, at least from what I can tell, and of course, I've been following the offseason here on the channel for years now, there's a lot more optimism from a lot of the reporters than even Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and his extension last year. What's your current feeling, and how are things feeling surrounding Bo after last year and the brutal performance the heartbreaking performance in Game 7?
I think with Bo, it's where it's always been, and this time of year, you are going to get a lot of Blue Jays interested in Blue Jays looking. Of course they are. I mean, come on. I hate this time of year because there's a lot of BS. And there's a lot of stuff that is said just to get people aggregated and retweeted when really it doesn't mean anything. And I spend most of November and December looking at my phone and thinking, like, man, we don't do this in other sports. Shut up. So there's going to be a lot of fluff
Yeah.
that I don't think folks should put as much passion into as I know it's tempting to do. Now, in other sports, I'm a fan. Like in the NFL, I'm a big Packers fan. If there's a rumor about them being in on when they were leading up to the Micah Parsons trade,
Yeah.
I was unreasonable, so I get it. But the thing I always come back to in the offseason as a rule is that every team will be interested in the player who is better than their own worst player. Of course they're interested in Bo Bichette, okay? They are interested in every single free agent who's better than the worst guy on their current roster. So interest doesn't mean anything to me whatsoever. But the fit and the relationship definitely do. And Bo Bichette, all along, forever, has said that he wants to play in Toronto, and he wants to play with Vladdy. He has said that when he was young, at his current age. He said it before Vladdy's extension and after. He said it before this World Series run, and he said it after, standing in the clubhouse, that he's always said he wants to be here. And that matters, coming from Bo Bichette, more than just about any player in this team, I would say. And I've covered Bo's whole career. He's not talk just to talk, okay? He's very respectful with media. He gives you time. I really appreciate covering him over the years, but he doesn't want to hang out and chat. He does not want to hear his own voice. He wants to go take 10,000 ground balls, which is why whenever I talk to Bo, I'm like, listen, Bo, 2 questions, 60 seconds. You can go work out more, okay? He's a machine. But when he does talk, you got to listen to him. You've got to believe him. And that's an important piece to this that the Blue Jays genuinely have. They have it. But it only goes so far, Sentimentality will not make him take 150 mil in Toronto if someone else is offering 200 mil, okay? I don't think it makes up for 10 mil. Maybe 2, 5, I don't know. But what the Blue Jays have is a tiebreaker. And that is something that they have lacked for years. They had that with, I would argue, with Vladdy, even though they weren't bidding against other folks. They had that sentimentality that created desire. It created motivation to negotiate, to find a way. What I think they have right now with Bo is motivation to find a way. Now, if the number goes beyond what they think makes sense, well, see you later. It's the tough business reality. But if we get to this point a month from now, where the Blue Jays and let's say two other teams have Bo right around the same range money-wise, I think the Blue Jays have that tiebreaker. And that's a good start. You're going to hear lots of stuff about front runners. They're the current leader. It's all BS. It's not how the offseason works. Teams and agents feel one another out and stand around for a while, and then boom, there's a sprint. Okay, it's not like a slow bidding war over 2 months. Everyone feels one another out, and then there's a sprint. When the time comes for that sprint, we'll see where the Blue Jays value Bo, and his position is going to be a major part of that. How teams view him aging will be part of that. And lastly, where I am with Bo is that some of Bo's potential decline as a defender and as an athlete could be offset by the type of hitter he is. I think that Bo can change his identity as a hitter going into his 30s. I think that he can maybe drop a few points in the batting average, but sell out for more power. I think he has that ability to choose the type of hitter he is. And there may come a time where hitting for a bit more power is what suits him. Instead of hitting 310 with 20 homers, maybe he hits 290 with 28 or 30 homers. I think he has that ability. Very few players have that ability, but he is so capable of shifting shapes and molding himself to what's needed in the moment. I think he can do that. He's a fascinating free agent. I've used the Willy Adames contract forever as a comp. I think he's still kind of there, but the range is going to be absolutely massive.
Yeah, and obviously one of the biggest questions you mentioned is defense. I mean, there's a lot of question marks just about free agency in general, and I'm guilty. I love every single rumor. You mentioned the Packers. I'm the same way with the Jays in this case. The baseball offseason is a very weird one in the sense of there's a lot of things going on. There'll be a lot of talks. One quick note before we move on from Bo Bichette, the second base position. Now, we obviously know shortstop Andres Gimenez. I think personally that his value is much, much higher. Gimenez, that is, at short. Where do you currently see the Bichette sweepstakes? Let's say the Jays offer him the same contract. Do you have a feeling that he would be open to playing second base beyond what just he did in the postseason, but going forward as well if they pay him as a shortstop?
I suspect he would be. And that's not a report or inside info or anything, but I suspect just from being around Bo so much and his understanding for the game and his baseball intelligence, I think there comes a certain point where everyone has to recognize how this works and what makes the best team. I think that Bo's value, if you look at his wins above replacement value as a shortstop or a second baseman, it could be pretty similar, honestly. Whereas Andres Gimenez, if you kick him to shortstop, I think his ceiling gets much higher. And now that everyone involved has tasted what it's like when you play real baseball, and it's so much different than the regular season, than the wild card. Going to a World Series like this changes your brain chemistry forever. It changes how you view spring training, for God's sake. But now that Bo has tasted that, I think that's going to matter. And it's no small thing that he agreed to and was eager to come back as a second baseman on the verge of his own free agency. He knew that was already going to be a conversation with teams. And he went out there and played second base on the biggest stage in this league. It's not something that anyone would say no to, I don't think, but some guys would be a bit hesitant, thinking, man, I'm going to brand myself right now, right? So I think Bo is smart enough to be open to that. The money needs to make sense. This is always about money. But I think the Jays have the tiebreaker, and I think that after how the World Series worked, everyone in this has to see the potential of that Gimenez shortstop, Bichette second base setup.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think at the end of the day, he's going to get paid a lot. You said it in your recent article. There's a lot of different. I mean, GM Ross Atkins himself said that they have interest in bringing him back,
Yeah.
as they would. Now, you mentioned a lot of rumors, about players. Kyle Tucker. Let's briefly pivot to him, because I think this is your recent article as well, talking about Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette. Kyle Tucker's going to be well over 300 million. There's rumors about 10 years, 400 million, all these different things. Now, again, every single year, every offseason, there is the big free agent, whether that be the Jays after Ohtani, then Soto, Roki, Sasaki, which wasn't necessarily, you couldn't pay Roki a ton, but of course the Miles Straw trade, we all know how that ended. There seems to be a bit of a different buzz around Tucker. Now, you can tell me if I'm wrong and if it's just the media being the media, but it feels to me that, at least to some degree, this offseason feels different from the perspective of, Shane Bieber took and I'll dive into that briefly in a little bit, what seems like a pretty big payday, assuming his health is what we hope it is, right? Kyle Tucker, on the other hand, Jeff Passan named him as the perfect Jays fit. Again, he wasn't reporting necessarily that that's going to be either the favorites. But Kyle Tucker's a name to me to where, if you have to pick between Bo Bichette and Kyle Tucker, I know people in the comments yesterday in my video, they were really split. A lot of them said Bo, a lot of them said Kyle Tucker. I would like both of them. But it then becomes a name where, like, are the Jays actually going to be pursuing a player like this? Because we can't say that they haven't made offers this big in the past. They've just superseded that with reportedly Soto and, of course, Ohtani and others. Do you think this is a real possibility here, that they at least make a strong push and are among the finalists for Kyle Tucker, if you want to go in that way?
Yeah, it's real. And a few thoughts on that. And number one being that Kyle Tucker is a better player and a better fit than Bo Bichette. But I think the conversation is, what could you get if you have $350 million? Do you want one Kyle Tucker, or do you want Bo Bichette plus a good starter, a great reliever, another bat? If all of that money is there, and I believe it is, you're comparing more than just Tucker and Bichette. I think Tucker is the better fit offensively in the outfield for this team. But what else you can get with Bo is pretty enticing in there as well. I do think that, again, like, obviously the Jays are interested. He's really good. He's an outfielder, and they need an outfielder. But the money involved there, I don't think is an issue for them. Now, Tucker is a very good player. He's not an elite player. Juan Soto is an elite player. Shohei Ohtani is in another tier of his own. The Blue Jays went crazy making a push for each of them because they believed in them as truly elite, franchise-changing players. I don't think that's Kyle Tucker. And I don't mean that as a knock on the guy. There's just only 8 or 10 of those players in baseball, And the Blue Jays will have the finances available to go after Kyle Tucker to a certain extent if they want to. But I don't think his is a market that you chase. Ohtani, you chase it. If you value Ohtani at $500 million and he goes to $700, you chase that number. Juan Soto, I think, was worth chasing, frankly. Vladdy was worth chasing. Do you think the Blue Jays started at $500 million? Jesus, no. But Kyle Tucker, I think that's one where the Blue Jays would be a little more traditional in sticking to how they value him. But they'll be in it, and I don't think that any conversation about, they come second on guys, blah, 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 that's old, that's exhausted, it doesn't matter anymore. And frankly, that conversation and the Canada conversation are kept alive because a lot of people in Canada and around the Blue Jays keep them alive. I think everyone just needs to ignore that crap. It's over. The Blue Jays signed Vladdy. They went to a World Series. Like, no more of those conversations ever need to happen again. They've got the cash. They're a very attractive place to play. Every single player, every one of their partners, every one of their kids calls this the greatest place on earth. Like, there's nothing standing in the Blue Jays' way right now. It's just a matter of money. Do you want Kyle Tucker, or do you want Bo Bichette plus a starter plus another guy? It's an interesting dynamic, but I'm really interested to see if Tucker's market climbs. I think it's likelier to come down maybe below expectations than climb up and shock us at 400 and something. But again, a guy who's very good at everything, just not on that Soto Ohtani tier that very few are.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm a huge Kyle Tucker fan. I think he would be, he's obviously an amazing hitter.
Yeah.
It is going to be expensive, though, no matter what way you look at it. And you look at some of the, now these are the projected playing times if everything remains equal. And there's actually a lot of question marks. And, the bullpen, they're clearly going to make upgrades there. They need to make an upgrade at the starting pitcher position. Now, Kyle Tucker, where would you factor in? You'd probably, I mean, you have Varsho in center. I mean, Springer and Santander are projected to split right field. You still have Lucas. There's a lot of ways to go around these things, and I want to transition a little bit here. And I'm going to be on record saying I would also take, or I don't know if you were saying this, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I would take 1-for-1 Kyle Tucker over Bo Bichette, even on this team,
Yeah.
even with the chemistry with Vladdy and Bo. Now, if they can somehow pull off both of them, that's obviously the dream scenario. I don't see that as being super likely just because that would be an absurd amount of money. However, Ben Nicholson-Smith recently came out and spoke about starting pitching and how they are going to, and it seems that the market, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what we're hearing here is that the starting pitching market could come to fruition a little bit faster than the Bo Bichette market, specifically regarding them acquiring a starting pitcher first, because if they lose out on starting pitching, they're kind of screwed. Whereas if Bo Bichette happens to, in theory, walk, they have other guys who can replace him. You can find other players. Do you get that sentiment as well that they're going to be going after the starting pitching first? Or where do you think the first domino is to fall for the Toronto, or will fall rather, for the Toronto Blue Jays positionally? Because they have Berríos, kind of a question mark. I mean, he'll get his starts, but Gausman, Yasavage, and then Bieber now returning. They need at least one more starter. Now, the alternative is you have Eric Lauer, you have some other guys ready to go. Where do you foresee the Jays' first move being? And do you think the Bo Bichette market, just briefly, is going to transition super long into the winter? Or do you think that's going to come together fairly quickly?
I think Bo is a slower market because there's going to be a huge gap between teams that view him as a shortstop with offensive upside and teams who view him as a declining second baseman. So markets that are tough to define typically take a bit longer to find wherever the middle ground is. Whereas when you look at top end starting pitching, that's typically understood as being very valuable. The value is a little narrower on that, and it tends to be teams chasing value. Whereas Bo is going to be kind of trying to capture his value. Like it's a weird market for Bo, and I hope a market that goes well for him, but it is a peculiar market. Now, timing, that's up to agents. This stuff gets floated every year. This is going to move first. The trade market's going to move. It's same thing every year. But pitching, the Blue Jays not only need a starter, they need a long-term option in the rotation. They need to do what they did with Gausman 4 years ago. They need to do what they did with Berríos, trading for him and extending him. They need to do what the Red Sox did with Garrett Crochet, trading for a star and extending him. Drafting and developing is one thing, and they're making great strides there, not just with the Savage, but Gage Stanifer will be coming up soon, I'm sure. Ricky Tiedemann's not being talked enough about. But 1 year from now, Gausman, free agent. Bieber, free agent. Berríos can opt out. Yeah, Savage looks great, but so do a lot of young pitchers. I think he could be an ace, but you can't bet on everything. So they need not just a starter, but someone you're locking up for 6 years, like a big, big move. I think that starter, I know that Bo Bichette is going to overshadow this whole offseason, but a starting pitcher and a damn good one, I think needs to be the number one conversation around this whole team, because the Jays are also coming off a run of 2 or 3 or 4 years where a lot's gone right in that rotation. You know, no major injuries. Guys like Eric Lauer have stepped up, and development stories have helped out. They've got to prepare for a year that's closer to average in baseball, where things do go wrong. And I think starter needs to be absolute top of the list. I get that Bo is the familiar name, and I have all the respect in the world for Bo. I'd love to see him back in Toronto, but they need a big name starter.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm at with it. Do you have a starter name in mind that you would, not reporting, but that you would like to see? I have mine, and it is Ranger Suarez. That's obviously the guy that I want. Now, there's Tatsuya Imai, who's, I'm sure the Jays are going to be very interested in him. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. There is a good few starters here. Do you have one that, I mean, people can be talking about him or not, that you think would be a good fit for the Toronto Blue Jays here? And again, I say Suarez because he's a lefty, he's very reliable, and it seems like a Ross Atkins type move to me. But is there one for you that you think they're going to dabble in more than others?
I'd be most interested in Tatsuya Imai myself. When I look at the top of the market, you look at Cease and King and Suarez, very good pitchers, but you're not getting great ace level stuff right away. And I'm not saying that you are an EMI either, but there's more upside there. You're chasing upside. And there are lots of cases, like Cease is a good example of feels like the guy that the right pitching coach should be able to get and turn back into a flat 3.0 ERA guy. Like the talent is there. We've seen it. Are you going to get that or no? I'm not sure. Like this starting pitching market is a bit of a strange one. And it's going to depend a lot on teams' individual tastes. I don't think that there's a very clearly defined 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that each team would have a much different ranking of that. I'm fascinated by Imai just because of the upside, because of his performance in Japan, because of the entire persona of him, quite frankly. I think he's a fascinating guy. And the Blue Jays have been very, very eager, beyond even Ohtani, to make an impact and land a big Japanese name. And they're eager to be part of that market. But I also keep coming back to the lazy answer, which is that I did not expect the Andres Jimenez trade last year, and I didn't expect the Berríos trade when that happened. Maybe something comes via trade. I don't know who that would be, and it's fool's guesswork to try. But did I think they'd trade for Louis Varland with 100 years of team control left? No. Like when the Blue Jays do their trade business, it's not normally for the obvious guy. But one way or another, they've got to impact this rotation beyond 2026. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting here a year from now talking about how they need 3 or 4 starters all at once, and that just doesn't work.
Yeah, they are. It's a good point. They're always active in the trade market, but in ways that nobody really sees coming, and that's the hardest thing to predict. There's been a few different names thrown out there in the trade market, but at the end of the day, Mackenzie Gore being one of them. I think that's an interesting one. A lot of different names like that. Yeah, some good stuff there. Before we wrap up here, kind of want to get your thoughts on a couple things. One, Shane Bieber. There's been a lot of talk about how they got this done, or I guess they didn't really get done. How Shane Bieber got this done. Do you have any? And again, after the stats or whatever you want to call it, it was like 1 year, 12 million. I think it's like the net value of it. Is there something that the average fan is missing about this deal? Because to me, and again, I might not be the average fan, but for most people, you look at this and you're saying, okay, even if you wanted to return to Toronto at 1 year, whatever, 12 million after the buyouts and stuff, couldn't if he just signed a 1 year, $20 million deal externally to bring him back, similar to, again, Max Scherzer? Again, he was a little bit cheaper than that. Or even a 2 year deal, $40 million with an opt out after the first, and then just to maximize his value. Why on earth did he sign a 1 year, $12 million deal unless there's not an injury, but the Tommy John recovery maybe took a step back? He wasn't feeling great. Do you have any insight on this? Because most fans, including myself, still a little bit confused as to why he didn't just get more. And then, of course, you have Ken Rosenthal and others out there, talking about how there is some external factors. Blow me away with an answer here if you have it, because I'm pretty bamboozled by it.
There's nothing wild. I very much assumed he would decline it and go right into free agency and maybe sign like a 2 or 3 year deal with some opt-outs, but big money, just to protect him while also giving him the opportunity to re-enter the market. Now, it's very surprising, but I do think that American baseball media has treated it as if this is Michael Jordan choosing to go play baseball or something. Like, there's some sensationalism that is exposing some people. That's the way I'll say it. Again, very surprising. But since Bieber arrived, the things that I do know is that he's talked at length about how much he likes it, how much his wife likes it, how much he appreciates the Blue Jays staff and what they offer. And he is also a very smart guy. Like, Shane Bieber's really sharp. And he sees what the Blue Jays have done with Gausman, with Berríos, with Bassett. Robbie Ray, fantastic example. And not just in terms of performance, but keeping them healthy. The Blue Jays, with what they have at their training facility in Dunedin, Florida. Everywhere is getting fancy now, but the Blue Jays have top of the line, state-of-the-art facilities there. So this is not just Bieber. I think it's being improperly framed as Bieber just taking this big bet on himself and taking a bit less. I think he's also betting on the Blue Jays, I think he is betting on their strength and conditioning people. I think he's betting on Pete Walker and their programs. He's betting on their reputation. And he's betting on the fact that he's going to probably be pitching for a playoff team in the AL East on the big stage. If that's what your appetite is, I salute you, you know? So there's a lot of arrows that point towards this. They don't add up to it being a decision I expected whatsoever. But everything that you could hope for in terms of these peripheral things, family stuff, training stuff, spring training stuff, it seems like Bieber has loved all of those things about Toronto. And while it's surprising, absolutely, and I think he could have gotten 1 year, 18 or 20, I can at least get a few feet down the road of understanding it. It's there's an element of golly gee, why would he stay in Canada still at play with some of this, which I think is a bit rich. But the Blue Jays are better for it, man. I don't care what happens this offseason. That's probably the best thing that happens to them is Bieber coming back on that deal. That is spectacular.
Yeah, I think that'll be seen as, regardless of what happens, the biggest robbery strictly from now.
Great value.
It could also be as simple as, and I kind of just came to my head the more you started painting the picture. He is coming off of Tommy John. He might just want to get a head start on everything with a team he's familiar with now.
Very good point.
And the Jays could have told him, hey, we don't know for sure if we're willing to give you that 1 year 20, because if they go out and they sign another starter, then you have 4 starters. But then if they get in super deep talks with other people, maybe the Jays weren't super married to bringing him back at a super high number anyway. So that's why he opted in. So there's a lot of different avenues there. But the biggest
and if he wants to be, he can be at the complex tomorrow in Dunedin.
And that's the thing, I think.
Whereas if you are a free agent, lots of big agents and agencies have their own training facilities. You can go back to your college and all this type of stuff. But part of the reason the Blue Jays poured, what was $100+ million into that complex, is because they want guys training there. Everyone has their own hitting coach, their own strength guy, their own blah, blah, blah. Their dad who used to play, college ball or something, he trains them. The Jays want their own people there. And a lot of that's for prospects, but it also applies to stuff like this. Like Bieber can be right in the middle of that now. Like his training right now is different from Kevin Gausman's, because Gausman's elbow did not just get cut open and rearranged a year ago, right? So that's a very good point I hadn't thought of much, but he can, and I don't know where Bieber is in the world right now. I'm sure he's not in Dunedin every single day at this point, but if he wants to be there early, if he wants to be checking in with the training staff, he has all of that at his disposal right away. And if he thinks that he can go out and get a $200 million contract, then the $5 million he lost on this bet on himself, whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say, he could easily make, if he thinks the Jays provide him the most potential to have a great year, he's going to make all that back and more anyway. Yep. And free agency is weird. We've seen before players that we all expected the Jays to bring back, or any team, and then things happen, alternative changes, boom, and he's gone. Edwin Encarnacion was kind of one of them, and there's also a lot more dating back to today. So yeah, glad we have some clarity on that. I kind of just started to think about it. It makes more sense the more I do talk about it, though you mentioned it. There is some media members out there that make it seem like it's the best player in baseball taking a $5 million contract.
Like it's bad for baseball or something. Like we're getting a little too buttoned up about it.
And this guy hadn't pitched in 2 years or a year or whatever it was. So it's interesting.
But I think the way you worded it's great. It's if he views the Blue Jays as his best chance to enter free agency at the top of his game, it's worth some risk. He's viewing this as an investment in his career and in his one opportunity to really cash in. This was lined up as that opportunity. Didn't happen. Tommy John happened. He couldn't get back quick enough. If he had made 15 starts, yeah, he's probably a free agent now. But he clearly views Toronto as his best shot to have maximum value a year from now. And that is a credit to what the Blue Jays have built.
And I'm sure the Jays are probably telling him, if you go out and you have a great year, we'll extend you to that big contract, especially if he loves it in Toronto. So interesting there. Last question for you, and this one's going to sting me. It's going to hurt me to say, but I need to ask because I was thinking about it for a while. After that Game 7, you were as involved as anyone. What was the feeling from what you could tell? We saw you in the post-game interviews, you saw all these things. And of course, I also want to ask, what was your feeling throughout I can't even watch Instagram shorts on it. I haven't watched a single bit of baseball since it happened. But a couple things. the way the players felt, I'm sure, professionals, all these different things. John Schneider, he should have got manager of the year, by the way, but
Yeah.
I'll put that aside for a second. And then the IKF debacle that blew up, and that took over the internet for a few days. Do you have any of your own feelings, the way everyone felt? And I hate to talk about it because I genuinely try to just completely remove it, but I am curious how the feeling was from within the team after. I mean, you cannot paint a more heartbreaking loss. I can't even imagine what the players are going through, but even me as a fan, it was just every step of the way, inches here, centimeters there, millimeters to the left and right of winning a World Series, and you just tiptoe around it. Were they as devastated as I was?
I'll remember that room for the rest of my life, man. I still can't believe it happened, to be very honest with you. It's
Bring back memories.
strange in my job where like the necessary preface is that like a lot of my friends or family members, my job is strange where a lot of people think I work for the team or I'm a fan of the team, and I don't, and I'm not. Like my job is to cover the team, but I'm around them all year, and you do grow close to a team and to John Schneider, to the players. And what I care about is a good story, and that was one play away from being the best story I'll cover in my career. And honest to God, man, what were we talking on November 17th?
Yeah.
It's been 16 days. 100 different times I've been driving or I've been sitting on the couch here, and I'll be staring off into the distance just thinking, how the hell did that happen?
Same.
It's not only the tag play with Kiner Falefa, it is, I mean, that catch on Ernie Clement's deep fly ball. How did that happen? How was that held on to? It's the double up of Addison Barger at second base to end game 6, which I think has quickly been forgotten by history, but cannot be. All of these small plays and small moments that were just so stunning to watch play out. And
the 18 game too, part of the story.
Oh my God.
6 a.m. my time.
I was as sick as I've ever been that night. I'll never forget that game. I barely made it through it in LA. But I think back to what Caleb Joseph, and I love Caleb. He said this on Sportsnet after that. I think it was him talking when he said he thought the baseball gods got one wrong, and it finally felt like this Toronto team was going to knock out the Dodgers. It felt like that was going to happen. And I had the story written on my screen already.
I asked you about that.
I did, and I deleted it. I've kept some over the years, like the Ohtani story I put in the book, the Bowden Francis no-hitter stories. I still have copies of those. But that one I figured nobody needs this in their lives. And I was, getting prepared to go downstairs and cover a World Series celebration. I had, up in the press box, I had changed my shirt because I was doing TV that night and I couldn't ruin my suit, right? So I'm stunned it happened. I can't believe it happened. And I think very easily the third best Blue Jays team of all time, obviously behind 92 and 93. But the way it happened makes this team so meaningful. And I hope that this team is remembered and loved forever, because they were, what I will try to keep people remembering forever is that they were not supposed to be good. Okay, when people look back 20 years from now on these George Springer's stats and, he must have just had a down year the year prior. No, it looked like he was toast. Yep. I thought that we'd be talking about DFAing George Springer in Toronto. The
worst spring training of all time.
Horrible. And in spring training, it looked like Vladdy was going to walk. The Blue Jays can bid against 29 other teams. This season felt terrible in February and in March. And it became the best surprise that this city has ever seen in baseball. And it became one of the best sports stories this city has seen.
I think in baseball history, to be honest.
Really, yeah. Going back to 92 and 93, I know you have the Raptors and you have some moments in the city, but they grabbed a city because they surprised people, and people just plain loved them. I need to myself do a better job of kind of stepping back and realizing that that's what matters. My mom and your buddy who's more of a hockey fan but got into the Blue Jays, and your uncle, they don't really care about what Vladdy's expected batting average is on balls thrown. I don't even care about it. It matters that people gave a damn about this team, and it matters why. And because of that, I hope that this team sticks, with people. We've celebrated the 15 and 16 teams for a decade. It's long enough. All right. It's good. But I was just talking to someone about this, how like one play goes differently. This is a World Series team that I'm covering at reunions and events for 30 years. I'd be talking to Miles Straw and Eric Lauer and Brendan Little in the lobby of a Westin hotel somewhere 30 years from now, because all these teams do. Once you win a World Series, you get put on the tour of reunions and events and charity golf tournaments for the rest of your life. You're set. And I can't believe that's not going to happen. I'm stunned. And I'm never going to not be stunned by how that ended, because there were 5 or 6 or 7 things where it felt like fate was just pulling in the other direction. It's the Kiner Falefa play, but it's the catch by with Pages in the middle there. It is that throw to get Barger.
I think Jimenez had a line drive to third that was barely caught as well. Like
it's Jeff Hoffman giving up a homer to the number 9 hitter. I mean, it's
I can't even think about it.
I'm stunned. I might view it differently in time, but
I'm never gonna do
for now, 2 weeks later, I can't believe it. And I feel for Blue Jays fans too, man. Like I don't know what my great sports heartbreak is. Like Brett Favre throwing that crap interception to the Giants in the NFC Championship or something. I don't think I went to school the next day, but this is I understand people who are still angry about this one. I hope that it carries into more Blue Jays fandom and more people being excited about this team next year. And I hope this team gives them a reason to be. But holy, I just really that's where I'm at still. I just can't believe it happened.
Yeah, I can tell you how I feel as a Jays fan. It was the worst I've ever seen. And you mentioned it about bringing in new Jays fans, like obviously in the videos, but also we had me personally, a bunch of my friends who were kind of Jays fans,
totally
not even Jays fans, just baseball fans turned Jays fans. We had 20, 30 people every night at a house watching the game until the very end. And then I said, pitch to me. I remember very vividly to Miguel Rojas. I said, pitch to him, throw him a fastball down the middle. Otani's up next. He hits it out, and then the rest was history. I'm never gonna be able to watch that again. It's the first time where the thing that obviously I've taken a positive approach to it now on the channel, just because you have to, and I moved on from the heartbreak. The thing that really sticks with me is just that they were like so close to actually doing it. Every little thing that could have went wrong. But you mentioned it. We don't get to talk about the story that would have been, the amount of stories that would have came from that. Now it's just known as the season that could have been, and the season that ultimately wasn't because of a home run. And it was unfortunately one of the worst. It was the worst loss I've ever seen. I can't even imagine what it was like on the field in front of the home crowd too. Makes it 10 times worse. And there was just so many decisions there, but yeah, Keegan, it was a pleasure. Any final thoughts from you? Any quick? Why wasn't John Schneider manager of the year? I'll divert.
I have my problems with awards voting, and I think that following this season, I'm no longer going to vote in BBWA awards for many reasons.
So you did vote. Okay.
I voted for MVP, and which is good because everyone really liked that I voted for Aaron Judge. The voting for manager of the year, I think, is better left for managers and bench coaches, because I have voted on manager of the year before. Do I really know what Stephen Vogt or AJ Hinch or Aaron Boone are bringing to their teams each night? I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I struggle to answer that question with John Schneider, and I'm around him as much as anyone outside of his wife and kids, man. Manager's a tough vote in any sport, coach, manager. But I wish Schneider had won that. Really, really impressive season from him. Like that taught me what it looks like when a manager develops and grows. A different guy than I covered his first couple of years in the league. So they've got Vladdy, they've got the franchise manager, they've got a farm system, they've got cash.
Run it back.
And man, almost mercifully, the offseason's coming quick. We skip that whole October thing where we all sit around and watch other teams play baseball, So it's for the best. I've got my spring training hotels booked on my phone here. It's going to come maybe too quick for some of us, but hopefully that'll help people forget and move into a new year.
Yeah, it was a year to remember one way or another. And
Yeah.
it's funny to look back at the first video you were on a year ago, and we talk about how bad that team was, the 74 win team, and then
Man.
they almost pulled off. Keegan, thank you. Everyone watching right now, there'll be a link to his book in the description. Age is even better now after that.
There we go.
That World Series win. Maybe that would have been another book in itself if they had done it. But maybe there's another book at some point down the line as well. But Keegan, thank you very much for joining, and we'll be in touch again soon.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you.